I'm Andrew.
And I'm Alisa.
And you're watching
Designing Workflows. Marker. Am I good to do that?
Yeah. Hey everyone, we're talking abandoned browse workflows today.
You ready for this, Andrew?
I'm ready to rock. Let's dive in.
All right, let's do it. So abandoned browse is such an important strategy. We already talked about the importance of abandoned cart, but a lot of times people are really interested in a product and they view it a lot of times, but maybe they don't add it to their cart. And so you really want to engage with them and, try to get them to convert because they are interested in your products.
Got it. Okay. So if we're thinking about like a funnel, these people aren't at the bottom, right? Like they're not converting and they haven't even added it to their cart. So they're somewhere in like the middle of the funnel, right? So we're trying to like drive some consideration on the category that they're looking at, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool.
They're interested.
Right
they
on.
want to learn more.
You know what's amazing about these types of emails?
Let's hear it.
Is that they get about 30% open rates.
Wow.
Right? So that means like over 1,000 people that might receive one of these emails, you're gonna get eyes from 300 that you wouldn't have otherwise after they left your site.
That's really cool. Yeah, it makes sense too. People are engaged, they are visiting your site. When they get an email from you, they're probably gonna wanna open it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's really important to send like amazing content, the right message at the right time.
So let's talk about the strategy of abandoned browse. What are we supposed to do?
Yeah, so the first thing is to provide really relevant content, right? Like they're looking at specific products, and so we want to make sure that we're providing sort of a reminder of all of the warm fuzzies that they were getting when they were clicking through, looking at the products, right? So it's really important to keep the content of that email about those products. So whether it's like explicitly the products or some other strategy, that's just really key.
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Another thing that's important is just to be aware of the tone that you have in your messaging.
Yeah, what do you mean?
So you want to be really informational, but you don't want to be a kind of a pushy salesperson, right? So someone has viewed the products, they're interested, but they probably won't appreciate aggressive sales in emails.
Like I'm like a
it's like a
salesperson?
yes,
yeah,
exactly.
okay, all right. Like
Just
creeping
like that,
around, like,
just
hey,
like
buy it. Okay, cool.
Yeah, so just be aware of the tone, be informational without being too salesy.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Cool. When I'm setting this up with customers, I talk about like sending it at the right time is really important, right?
Yep.
So we could potentially set up a workflow to trigger the first time you viewed a product, right? Have you ever gotten an email like that?
Yeah.
How did you feel?
It's kind of creepy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
right.
It's like you view it once, maybe you weren't even that interested and you just happen to click on it and then suddenly you're getting bombarded with emails, which is just, it's too much.
Totally, right. There could be some creep factor to it, and then there's just like an unhelpful factor, right? Because you actually might not be interested, right? And so what we want to do is think about sort of like an affinity level, right? Like how interested are you actually in this product, right? And so there are ways to set that up in a drip trigger so that you can actually send out to people who are actually interested. It's going to be a little bit different for every store, but we suggest starting just testing with 3 views of a product category and sending an email and seeing what kind of engagement you get. When we dive into the workflow, we'll talk about that a little bit more.
Makes total sense.
Cool.
So you're talking about having the right timing with your messaging. Also important to just be sending the right message. So in your emails that you're sending out, you want to have that great content that uses your company's voice. You want to use your awesome branding. It's great to have good call to action buttons that will bring people right to your store. And then what's really cool is to have maybe recommended products based on categories that a certain person was looking at. That way it just brings the products back to the mind of the person who was looking at them in the first place, and they'll probably be interested and want to convert.
Totally, yeah. It's definitely going to be relevant content, right? Yeah, and I love how you mentioned that like it might be products, and it also could be something that's sort of related to the products that they're looking at, right? So like if you're selling socks, you might have like a buy one, give one program. And like maybe that's what you highlight if somebody's really interested in socks, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's it's related to what they're interested in, but it's not too aggressive. It's not, the exact thing that they were looking at a minute after they looked at it.
Yeah, right. So we'll talk about timing and all of that when we dive into the workflows. So you can hear it, there are a lot of really important components to all of this, and it's important to be really thoughtful about the timing and the messaging. So should we dive into a workflow and actually start building?
So before we even go into Drip and build out a workflow, it's really important to understand what data goes into Drip, which allows us to create these browse abandonment strategies.
Okay, all right. So the foundation of customer data.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's really important, right? Okay,
Yep.
all right, cool.
Yep.
So whenever I think about that, especially with a workflow like browse abandonment, I think about the idea of identification. So for you viewers out there, we're able to trigger an abandoned browse workflow when we know who is browsing on your site. Now, if a consumer hasn't identified themselves on their own browser and their device, then we don't actually know who's looking at products, right? And so it's really important that people are identifying themselves, giving you their email address so that you can marry their email address and their browser so that we can then trigger workflows like this.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yep.
Another thing that's important is understanding the data that's coming in from your e-commerce platform, like Shopify, WooCommerce, or Magento. It's important to make sure that that data is coming into Drip correctly. And so if you're new to Drip or if you're new to your e-commerce platform, it's worth your while to make sure everything's flowing in correctly. I recommend looking at some My Drip courses to make sure that the integration is set and your data is picture perfect.
Cool, right on. All right, let's start building.
All right, let's do it. So I'm actually not going to start building a workflow from scratch because we have a great shareable workflow for abandoned browse strategies.
For everyone out there, look below. You'll find a link to this shareable.
Yes. So anyway, with this shareable, first I'll start by going over the trigger. We have view to product via Shopify here. So I'm going to click into this trigger. And do you want to talk through kind of the logic in this trigger?
Yeah, perfect. So like with any trigger, we needed to make sure we understand where the event is coming from. So this is going to be a Shopify trigger. And then the event that we're actually firing upon is viewed a product. Okay, so this is an event that we actually get from Shopify.
Right.
Okay. Now there's one more criteria that we have set here. And this is a trigger criteria for viewed a product. Let's talk through what this means. So this is saying that this is only going to fire for people who have at least 5 of these viewed events,
right?
Viewed of product in the last 1 week, and we're including any product collection of shirts.
Okay.
Got it. So in human terms, that means for somebody who's browsing on a website,
right?
If they look at any shirt that is in the category of shirts,
right,
then we're going to record those view to product events. And once they reach 5 in 1 week, they'll be triggered into this workflow.
Makes total sense.
Cool. All right, so I'll update that and we'll close out. All right, so I know that we talk about triggers, but there's also a really important thing that we need to think about right when we're looking at a workflow, right?
Absolutely. Whenever you're building out a workflow, it's always important to think about what the goal of the workflow is going to be.
Cool.
So before going any further, I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom of this workflow and point out that we have a goal here when an order is created via Shopify or when an order is placed in general.
Okay.
So if a person is brought into this workflow and if at any point they make a purchase, then they'll be pulled down to this goal and they won't be getting those emails.
Got it. And so this works for any sort of purchase or any order. This isn't going to just be for shirts. This is for any order.
That's a great call out.
Okay.
Yep.
Right on. Cool. And this works for Shopper Activity API and Magento as well, right?
Yes, it does.
Perfect. Cool.
Great. So I'll go back up to the top of our workflow. And the thing that comes after the trigger is a decision. So the next thing we want to do is go to the decision, and we want to figure out if the person has placed an order for one of those products in the last week or so.
Okay.
If they've placed an order recently, you maybe don't want to further engage with them. They've already converted. So if they have already placed that purchase, we'll exit them out of the workflow.
Perfect. Okay, cool.
But if they have not yet made a purchase or haven't in the last week, we'll have a delay here for about an hour. And that's because you want to give a person time to actually convert. So they maybe view a product and then it takes them a little bit of time to actually make a purchase. Okay. So you want to give them that buffer time.
Oh, and you probably want to wait an hour because once somebody hits that 5th view, we're going to fire them into the workflow, and we might be going down the creep factor if we send them an email immediately, right?
That's a really good point. Yeah.
Cool.
Right on. So next thing, send an email, right?
Yeah, right on. So this email, you can see that we're calling out the category that they're looking at, right? Because we're triggering on any number of shirts that they're looking for, we know that they're interested in shirts. And so we're going to send them an email about shirts in general, right? So we've got long sleeves or short sleeves. That is the question. Shakespeare asked that one time, right? Yeah, right, exactly.
He never knew what to wear.
Right, no, he never did, right, exactly. So we're gonna send this email, and again, this could be, top selling products in the shirts category, right? It could be really engaging content about shirts. Fun facts you never knew about shirts, right? I mean, that's hard hitting.
That is hard hitting.
It could be.
I want that email.
It could be something about like your shirt supply chain or the people who pack up the shirts, or anything that is engaging content related to the category they're interested in.
Totally makes sense.
Cool.
Nice. So then we have a little series here, and basically this is resending to people who haven't opened that first email. So we have a day delay here, and then we ask the question, did they open that first email? If they did open it, great. We'll funnel them down to the next step. But if they haven't yet opened it, we'll resend an email.
Got it. So we have a different subject line here. Just when you thought you didn't need shirts, we got you.
We got you.
We got you. So really make this easy on yourself. You can send the exact same email with a different subject line because they actually haven't seen the content of that first email.
They haven't opened it.
Right.
Yeah.
So you can just basically duplicate that one-off email right in that node there.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Cool.
So I'll go down a little bit more.
Oh, what's going on here?
All right, so we have 2 delays here, and I want to talk through these. We have a pretty long delay in this workflow because we want people to stay in the workflow for a while so that they don't get pulled in again into this workflow right away. So you don't want them to continuously be pulled into this workflow. So before the exit and after the goal, we want that 14-day buffer so that they're not getting inundated with these view to product emails.
Cool. Oh, yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. I'm thinking about like optimization here. Like if we wanted to build something, like the next thing to beef this up a little bit.
Sure.
What might we use to actually do that?
So a great way to optimize any workflow is to leverage our split test functionality.
Perfect.
So you can create multiple paths in your workflows where you're testing out different strategies and seeing which strategy gives you the most revenue or order conversions or even site visits.
Got it. Okay, so like if in this case we could do a split test with additional emails, or we could even use something more fancy like a Facebook custom audience.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Very cool. Anything else that we need to know about this?
So this workflow is almost there. But because we just installed a shareable workflow, there's some kind of customization we need to do because it's pretty generic right off the bat.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's walk through some of the nodes that we need to tweak a bit once we install it from our shareable workflows.
Okay, cool.
So the first thing is in the trigger, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's walk through this.
Okay.
So if we hop into the trigger, we can see that this view to product event is standard, so you don't need to mess with that at all.
Right.
But you're going to need to add your collection here that you actually are trying to fire upon, right? So socks, candles, whatever it is that you sell out there, you'll need to choose the correct collection.
So by default, there won't be anything selected.
So shirts is going to be in there.
Oh, shirts is going to be there.
Shirts is going to be, the collection you're starting with. But of course, that might not exist in your store.
So unless you happen to have a collection called shirts, like Shakespeare does, then it won't be.
Exactly. You know, one other thing to keep in mind here, depending on how your Shopify store is hooked up, you might be using collections. But if you're not using collections in your Shopify store, you might need to play around and test different product types or even product tags. I've worked with a lot of customers and we've just had to troubleshoot this a little bit. So just figure out what actually works for your store. Right?
Cool.
Yeah. So that's going to be important in the trigger there.
All right, let's talk through this decision. Are there any things that need to be tweaked right off the bat?
Yeah, absolutely. You can see that this screen looks just like that trigger criteria screen.
Yeah.
And we have a product collection of shirts here again. So you'll need to select the collection or group of products that actually makes sense to filter on here.
You don't want it to all be about shirts.
Right, exactly.
All right.
Right.
But you don't change the email subject line, right? You want to keep that.
Yeah, because everyone is going to be using shirts, right?
Change the email subject line.
Please change it. Yeah.
All right, cool. Any other callouts we want to talk through?
So one more thing that you'll need to customize is this decision here. You'll need to select the email that is displaying up here. Just make sure that is actually selected in this drop down right here.
That makes sense.
Cool.
Nice. All right, are there any other tweaks we need to make after we install this workflow?
No, that's it.
Cool. Yeah. All right, so next step, let's start the workflow.
Boom.
Let's do it. So after you start your workflow and it's active for a few days, it's time to look at your workflow's performance on our workflow dashboards. So Andrew, our workflow dashboards are awesome. They let you see the performance of your workflow and see what's working and what's not. And it allows you to optimize your marketing strategies so that you can ultimately build better and more profitable relationships with your customers.
So let's dive in and take a look at what we can actually learn about a workflow's performance.
Yeah, absolutely. So once you start the workflow, you'll want to drill into your workflow dashboard and see how your workflow is doing. On this dashboard, there's a lot of information here. First and foremost, the dashboard shows you how much revenue your workflow is bringing in. So you can see for each day how much revenue is coming in, and you can adjust the time frame so that you can assess maybe a full month or a week, and you can figure out, which weeks are performing better than others, and you can drill into certain days that are performing maybe differently than other days, and you can figure out why that's happening. And then also you'll be able to see how your specific emails are performing in the workflow as well. You can see a lot of great data for each email in the workflow. You can see order and revenue data, see how many conversions are happening. And then for the emails, you can see how many have been sent, opened, and clicked, and even unsubscribed.
Cool.
Yeah, it's a great way to see how your workflow is performing, and it gives you a great lens so that you can optimize your marketing strategies.
Yeah, a lot of customers I work with will take a look specifically at the automation emails and see how much money they're driving with each of those emails for a period of time, and then how well they're performing, and then are constantly tweaking with split tests to make sure that they're optimizing.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So let's talk about the key takeaways here.
Let's do it. So with the abandoned browse strategies, it's really all about right message and right timing. So in formulating the right message, you want to instill that correct tone in your messaging. You don't want to be an aggressive salesperson. You don't want to be that guy. You really want to be welcoming, informative, and what really works is showing product details from your company in the category that people were looking in.
Yeah, and just like you said, you want to make sure you're sending it at the right time. So thinking about the right threshold to actually trigger this workflow so that people aren't creeped out and they're being engaged at the right time. That also means setting your delays and making sure that is really firing the right kind of customer journey that you want your customers to experience. Remember, you can find this browse abandonment workflow down below. There's a link that will help you install it right into your Drip account.
Also down below, you can find any MyDrip resources that can walk you through the abandoned browse strategy, as well as many other strategies you should implement. And last but not least, if you ever have questions or are confused about something, we have an awesome support team that is here for you, and you can always reach out to them.
They are the best.
The best.
They know their stuff, they know Drip, they would love to be helpful for you.
They would love it. So talk to them if you have questions.
If you have questions, or if you're lonely.
Or if you need a friend. I don't know.
Alisa, did we nail it again?
I think we did.
Oh, what do we do when we nail it?
We did.
We dance.
Hello.